So our next panel is our second lunchtime panel, and it's all about how consumer expectations continue to soar with the explosive growth in e-commerce. So this panel, our panelists will share what their customers are demanding specifically in website experiences and how to meet those demands today. So welcome to all of you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Katie, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, as Katie said, for joining us for this Lunch and Learn session, What Customers Demand in Website Experience. As online shopping has soared over the past year, customer expectations for an easy to navigate, fast, and secure shopping experience have grown as well. Our panel of industry experts today will explore the balance between delivering a high-performance site with a robust online shopping experience and the need to protect the brand and customers' data. So I'd like to welcome our panel, Roxana Turcanu, Director of Product and Growth at Adore Me, Dustin Jones, CEO at Unified Commerce Group, and Tara Bartley, Senior Manager, Industry Marketing at Akamai. And thank you again to Akamai for being an elite sponsor for today's virtual event. So let's kick off today's discussion. To start with, I wanted to put this to everybody. How have retailers been able to reshape business models as they go through digital transformations? And what are some of the steps in that journey? So whoever wants to kick it off, go for it.
Well, I can start. I don't mind starting. Thanks for having me. I think the first thing that retailers have done during this era of digital transformation is they understand the need to be vertical. And being vertical means that you have access and control of all of your data. And so I think over the past 3 years, most retailers have sort of woken up and realized that the most important currency in retail isn't money, it's data. How you collect it, how you attribute it, how you learn from it, how it helps you lower your acquisition costs, how it helps you elevate your personalization and your loyalty programs and get to know who the real tribe of your customer base is. And when you understand them at your core, then how you develop product, how you develop retail models, how you develop supply chain models, all of that personalizes into who your true customer is. So to me, the power of becoming vertical in order to harness and gather data and learn from it has been probably the #1 lead into digital transformation.
Roxana, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I speak from the perspective of, a digitally native company. So at Adore Me, we're technologists. We think of data all the time, but for us, the journey was really about the customer. So, starting from this position of direct to consumer brand, we've always tried to learn who our user is. Because it became very clear that people have different comfort zones when it comes to shopping online still. And some people are still going through that transition, even with confinement and the events of last year. So we need to be able to generate that same level of trust that you would have walking into a store that you have when you shop online. So for us, it was really, how do we generate trust? How do we have all the guarantees that a customer might need? And we even went the route of creating a new shopping model to do that. So we said, try the product on first, decide if you like it, and then pay later, to be able to mitigate that trust barrier and make sure that everyone is served, not only the most technology savvy of customers.
Yeah, I'm sure apparel, even though some retailers took a hit for apparel, it sounds like you guys had a very positive experience despite the pandemic. So, so because of that, so how did you have the type of website backbone to create this robust shopping experience for your returning and new customers amid the pandemic? And how did your CMS affect the overall user experience, the customer management system, CMS?
Should I start?
Yeah, go for it.
For us, it's always been about building things in-house to be able to have control. So we're pretty special that way, that we've always wanted to build our toolkit. So especially for CMS, it's been quite a journey because things have changed dramatically in the past few years. The level of content that someone demands of us has completely exploded. You become as much of a publishing company as you are an apparel company. So we need to be able to sustain this level of content, of video, of dynamism. So for us, the answer was, let's build it ourselves and make sure that all the requirements are there and all the use cases are covered.
I think the question is a really good question, and it's the CMS is a really interesting decision to make, because there are, depending on your size, building it yourself can be a really good way to go. But if you're a retail brand that is sub 100 million in sales, you probably can't afford to prioritize building your own CMS, and you probably need to find a really good partner to help you do it. And because even if you know how to build it, you probably don't know how to fully leverage it. And whereas probably within Roxana's team, they got the digital capabilities, being a digitally native brand, where they're able to build it and then know how to use it. I think with technology, it's more knowing how to use it than it is whether or not you own it or somebody else owns it. And so I think in our case, we operate brands globally. And so how you operate a brand in China is very different than how you operate a brand in North America, but how you leverage the assets is very similar. And so your CMS has to be able to allow you to navigate cross territory. And that's one of the things that I would look at for any company that's looking at how they invest in a CMS, is if they have global ambitions, they really need to check against whether or not their current system or the system they're looking at can help them make that journey. For our businesses, we are very much moving into what Roxana said about publishing and about content creation and about interesting short form content, whether that short form content is TikTok related or Instagram or Facebook related or live video related, where we're moving a lot of our product creation to live video. We just did a live video with one of our brands in China, and in 5 minutes we sold 17,000 pairs of shoes. And so how you handle that and how you manage for that is very different. But you have to have an efficient content management system that allows you to scale with the new content needs that the different social channels are requiring.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You really have to be on top of all of the algorithms changing and all of the different ways that people have to promote themselves now. I know Instagram is favoring Reels these days, so you really got to like figure out which is the best way to promote your products. And with the, explosion of more online sales, there's also an explosion of fraud online. So this question is for Tara. What are some of the fraud trends that you've seen are most prevalent in e-commerce?
Yeah, so gosh, criminals are out there. They are really at it. To Dustin's point about data being so important to retailers, and the personalization aspect of it is so important, particularly with what we've seen in the past year or so. Criminals know that. They know that retailers are collecting more data. And so what Akamai is seeing across our platform, we have over 800 retail customers. So we're able to have a pretty good lens across the world. We're seeing account takeovers via credential stuffing to be a really big problem with retailers. So the criminals are going after the account information that you sign up with, but then they're also going after gift cards and reward points. And it's a real serious problem for retailers.
And what are some steps retailers can do to mitigate that?
Yeah, so some of the things that our customers are doing is they're using for attacks, they're using automated bot detections to stop the large scale attacks. So that's essentially about separating the bots from actual people logging in.
So that kind of ties into data as we were talking about. And this question's for everybody. How are you seeing data disrupting digitization and digital commerce? And how do you kind of harness this? And again, what steps are you taking to protect that data?
I can speak to that. So, I mean, as an intro, it might be a controversial opinion, but online shopping is not that easy if you think about it. So especially in our sector, when you think of fashion, so comparison shopping, looking up brands online, it's tedious, and there's no real guarantees of fit or size and so on. So personalization, besides being the key, like the buzzword, is really, really important. And In our sphere, we compete with marketplaces that can do this very easily. They do this at scale. And so you're expected, even as a smaller brand, to be able to deliver this level of personalization. So data becomes very important, and actually leveraging data and not capturing it for the sake of capturing it becomes very important. So we think of it in terms of, when is the best time to engage you? What kind of content we should engage you with? What do you respond to? What kind of product we should engage you with? What kind of offers? So it's really the bread and butter of what we do. But we also try to offer choice at the core of it. So choice when it comes to data collection, choice when it comes to the way you browse. So you should always be able to do both and opt in and opt out. And this is what we've been mindful about at Adore Me.
And I would just add to what Roxana said around personalization. It is a buzzword, but then what are the practical applications of what personalization means? And I would give two examples. The first is an example from when I was with the Alibaba Group, and when we started on this campaign called Tmall, and many people have heard of Tmall as a business. They've heard of Singles Day now. But when we started with Singles Day, it was smaller than Black Friday. It was a new concept, and Alibaba was a $6 billion company. And when I, officially sort of left those organizations, I think the market cap was around 700 billion. And so one of the things that was the key to our success was the fact that we brought every company or every partner that worked with us onto one data platform. And versus other companies that do mergers and acquisitions and they let their companies stay with their own data platform, we forced everyone onto our data platform. By doing that, we could attribute consumers and we could get 900 attributes, which gave us a 95% confidence level of predictability in what they did and how they behaved and what they needed. So when we started buying stores and retail units, we could help our retailers assort size, color, classification, price point, and timing of delivery by zip code. We could tell a brand when they're launching, if you want to go to Shanghai and you should be in this district in Shanghai, you should have this size profile, that you should deliver sweaters in red at this time, at this price point. And you could teach your reporting to help them access that information. So when you think about the likelihood of success, when you have that type of information, it accelerates that likelihood a lot more. So that's like a big company example. If you think of a small company example and companies that are trying to battle into like staying power, the three things that most companies are thinking about is how to, one, convert people to buy. And the cost of conversion in fashion is $42. That's the general cost of acquiring a new consumer. The cost of getting that consumer once acquired to repeat is $7. And then you can't really quantify the loyalty cost to transition them from a repeat customer once to a customer that buys 20 times. But everything that a brand is trying to do on the operational side is to go from conversion, retention to loyal consumer. And data is really the path that lowers those customer acquisition costs, that improves your ability to retain, and ultimately drives that customer funnel into loyalty. And so that is, in a practical aspect, why brands need to sort of map out their data roadmap and how they attack those three areas of the consumer funnel.
So yeah, clearly data is important for the retailer side of things, but a lot of consumers might feel a little sketchy about sharing so much data with the retailers that they're shopping with. How could you put their minds at ease or tell them why it's so important that you collect this and how you're protecting that for them?
Well, the simplest answer that I would give is I don't know anybody who doesn't love the convenience of Amazon. That is an Amazon Prime consumer. I don't know anybody that's especially during COVID, it was like, dang it, I wish Amazon didn't exist, or I wish Walmart didn't exist. And, I don't know anybody that was like, oh man, I hate Netflix. The reality is all of these customer experiences that are being generated because service providers are trying to learn more about you and get to know you better, and then ultimately surprise and delight you at greater levels. I don't know anybody that that tries on a product and that they love, and they're like, darn, it just fits too well. And so ultimately, how do we do that unless we have information, so it's just like, if you were to fill out a survey, you do that. Why do you fill out a survey? Well, you do that so that people can figure out how to help you better. Data is a survey that allows us to figure out how to serve you better. And then we have people that we pay to help us protect your data and keep your data safe, like Tara, that help you, and then we can blame them if it doesn't happen correctly.
It's a great point. I find it extremely interesting what's happening right now with iOS 14 and the changes that Apple has been rolling out. And there you see, very different side of that conversation around privacy, and the way it's being framed is quite negative. Whereas what you mentioned, which is, everyone loves their Netflix feed, is quite positive. And so I think it's important to educate customers as to the use cases. It might not be that everyone in your database wants to really learn the nitty-gritty of personalization, but for those who do and they are concerned, that information needs to exist, and it needs to exist in a way that is, easy to understand. It is really easy to understand the output of it and what you're getting for it, and so you can make that choice.
Yeah. I know I enjoy getting the emails that say, here's all the things that we think you would like from whatever retailer, or even Netflix, like, you watch this, so watch this next.
But I do think Roxana made a good point. It seems as though there was a period of time where marketers were super proud at how much information they could collect. And I remember recently sitting down with a customer and saying to the CIO, why are you collecting this data? And he shrugged and said, I have no idea, because my CMO told me to. And so it is important to look at that too. So if you're Sephora and you want to know the year I was born because you're going to send me wrinkle cream, that's great. But if you're just going to send me a coupon for the month that I was born and it isn't related to the year I was born, then don't collect it. You're putting yourself at more risk collecting more data that you don't necessarily need.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This question mainly for Roxana. What steps have you undertaken or are currently undertaking amid the pandemic that is continuing still to optimize the consumer experience on your digital channels? And have you had any demand planning been impacted by that at all?
Oh my, the demand planning is bringing back memories. So yeah, for us, it was a bit of a demand shock. So we were lucky in the sense that we were online and it was what we did best. But I feel like a lot of things were kind of in the making. So COVID accelerated some trends, and it also put us in a place to really leverage some of the infrastructure that we had built for years before. So when it comes to demand planning, we saw a complete shuffle in terms of what people wanted to buy. And it was not what we had planned a year before. And it was not the spring break outfits. It was really stay-at-home outfits and so on. And so at that point, we had a buffer. We could deal with it, but it also meant that in 6 months, we would be completely out of product. And so it was really an emergency situation for us. And we started leveraging, both the relationships that we had with our suppliers, which were years in the making, but also the diversification that we luckily had in place. And we went from increasing purchase orders where possible to shortening lead times where possible to, buying other types of products. And we also went into rethinking completely our procurement infrastructure to be able to have more buffer in the future. You can't really predict a pandemic, but you can be a bit smarter about how you think of your product volumes. And so it was really a collective exercise, and it was a couple of months of high anxiety, but it really paid off 6 months later, and it made us a lot more agile internally to be able to cope with things like that in the future.
Do you feel like you've kind of caught up now and you're better prepared in case of another disaster?
I'm not going to say anything because I'll jinx it.
So this is kind of a very general question, but how do you think that the pandemic has affected the customer shopping experience? Like back when it started over a year ago to like in the future, how do you think the shopping experience has changed?
I think that we talk about, because we have a global business and we're operating retail, groups everywhere. One of the things we used to always say is that China was 10 years ahead of the West in terms of technology adaptation and retail experience. And I think today we would say that that's like 1 or 2 years away. And there's different reasons for that, but I look at the QR code as the best example. In China, we would use QR codes all the time. It was a very normal thing for people to use. And in the US, we've been trying to use QR codes for 10 years without adaptation. The minute a restaurant gave you only a QR code as an option for figuring out what you could order to eat, everybody adopted. And so it really has, there's examples of that along every channel, but I think that there's been a really strong adaptation and awareness around technologies that consumers are now willing to use. I think that also the consumers felt the power of their community. We were on today where there's a company we're about to acquire, and we were meeting with their sort of retail arm, and the head of their retail was walking us through their distribution of stores. And he was talking to us about how B malls became A malls because consumers weren't driving to malls. And if they were going to the one that was closest to them. And they were talking about the value of main streets versus malls, where consumers wanted to support local in a much different way. And so they saw a lot of surging demand there. And I think that COVID has taught us, this accelerating adaptation of certain technologies. B, it's also taught us the value of our local community and ways in which we engage with that local community. And I think a lot of local retailers have seen that benefit.
Tara, how do you think that fraud will be affected in the future?
I think that fraud is just going to continue to escalate. We're seeing it across all of the industries that Akamai serves, but particularly within retail and financial services. And so I just think whether businesses are small or large, it is something that some retailers put off 2020 because they focus their dollars on marketing, understandably so. But I think that retailers really need to take a look at what security they have in place to protect their own business and, of course, to protect their consumers.
Great. Let's see. And how are you helping brands prevent and detect the different kinds of account takeover?
Yeah, so we have a number of different security solutions. And one of them, as I mentioned before, bot detection. That's something we do through our product, Bot Manager. But then we do a number of different things in helping retailers with their third-party scripts within their infrastructure. It's really, really challenging to manage. And retailers need to be both managing and monitoring in order to protect their website. So there's a number of different security solutions that we have in place and that we consult and implement for our retail customers.
Great. All right, well, it is time for us to wrap up this session. I just want to say thank you again to Tara, Roxana, and Dustin for the great discussions today. And thank you to the viewers at home or at work who are watching this. And